Rafael Barlowe joins us on 365 Sports. The NBA draft is around the corner. Rafael, hey, man, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Craig Smoke, David Smoke, and Paul Catalina. So with all the international flair, do I not see as many of those type players this draft? Is there a reason for that, or am I missing something?
It's a combination of both. They just went to college first. So with NIL and all the money that international players can make by going to college first, you're starting to see a big influx of international players choosing the college route. So there are guys like Yegor Dimin, Kasparas Yakachonis, guys like that are international players that just play 1 year of college basketball, and now they're in the one and done category as opposed to being considered international.
Rafael, this is a very interesting draft because you've got Cooper Flagg at the top. The Mavericks are going to draft him unless something wild happens, which I don't think is going to happen. But right when you get to number 2, the Spurs are faced with a question that includes Kevin Durant, possibly Giannis, although that doesn't look likely that it's going to happen, and all of this. So is this one going to get really fast because of that?
I think the Spurs are just going to go with the best player available, which is Dylan Harper. And whatever happens after that, I mean, I think it will open up some options. But the Spurs, I think they do have an interesting situation because, in my opinion, Harper's a point guard. De'Aaron Fox, who they just traded for at the trade deadline, he's best with the ball in his hands. And then Stephon Castle, who was the Rookie of the Year, he's best with the ball in his hands. And I understand that teams are running multi-ball handler lineups, but I don't know if all three of those guys really complement each other. So San Antonio does have an interesting decision to make, but I don't think that whoever they take at number 2 is going to have any impact on Kevin Durant. Now, Giannis, maybe.
You alluded to it jokingly about the Mavericks. Like after this past year, we can't trust them to do the surefire thing. There's always a chance they could go crazy and do something like they did just a few months ago. But how much of a sure thing and how much of a no-brainer is Cooper Flagg at number 1?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. He actually is supposed to be in town, I guess, tomorrow it's just a formality. But I think the Mavs are going to take Cooper Flagg, unless it's just a crazy, unique situation where he says that he doesn't want to go to Dallas because he wants to go to a team where he's given the keys to the franchise from day one. I don't see a situation that unfolds where he's not the number 1 pick. Matter of fact, I mean, I live in Dallas. He's probably going to start looking for houses on his trip tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel like he fits in with the fabric of what they already have?
He's exactly what Nico Harrison said that he wanted when he made the trade. He talked about defense as being the cornerstone of what the Mavs plan on doing. So on one hand, I get it from the defensive standpoint. He's a very good defender. He can defend multiple positions. He led Duke in blocks and rebounds and steals, also scoring and assists. So he does have what the Mavericks have needed as far as like an additional multi-positional defender. But then again, with the timeline that was mentioned, I mean, he's only 18 years old. He just turned 18 in December. So I don't know if he necessarily fits that immediate championship timeline, but he does give the Mavs fans a bright future.
Duke will have how many players possibly, Rafael, drafted in the first 10 picks? Is there 3? Is that right?
I think there'll be 3 drafted in the first 10 and 5 overall.
We're talking to Rafael Barlowe, the NBA draft at the end of the month here on 365 Sports. Paul?
What do you think that when it comes to VJ Edgecombe, where he fits in before Ace Bailey? Like, does it come down in that top 10 to kind of personal preferences on what they are? Because obviously the 2 Rutgers guys didn't play very long, after the season was over because they spent all their money on just those 2. So there's some debate on them, but does VJ maybe jump a spot there or so?
Yeah, I think that obviously Cooper's going to go number one. I think Dylan Harper is the lock at number two by the Spurs. Whether he plays for them or not, that's a different subject. But I think 3 through 10 is, I mean, you can make a case and say it's all in the eyes of the beholder. I definitely think VJ has a chance at going number 3 to Philly. I've heard that Charlotte really, really likes him, and they're a team that's going to really value like character and intel. And VJ's character and intel has come back. I mean, as clean as I mean, so clean the Board of Health couldn't find dirt. I mean, people really, really love him as a person. And so Charlotte has had some issues, not necessarily last year, but just some guys that have had some issues off the court. And I think they had the 2021 draft that was just absolutely just brutal for that fan base. So from everything I hear, that they really like VJ at 4, but there's a chance that Philly could take him at 3.
You know, I try to read as much as I can when it comes to the prospects, and I'm not anyone that breaks it down too much. But what are the drawbacks, if anything, with VJ and also UT's Trey Johnson?
So I'll start with Trey. I am a huge Trey Johnson fan. I mean, like I mentioned, I live in the Dallas area. I've watched him grow up, and I've watched him just work on his body, but he's just a phenomenal scorer. I'm probably higher on him than a consensus. I would actually take Trey at number 3. And I think that, I mean, just what he did this year at Texas, the SEC was historically tough. He led Texas to the first 4, but he led the SEC in scoring. He shot 39% from 3 on a heavy volume of contested attempts. And it was, a lot of attempts, 6 attempts per game. I think he's one of the more gifted scorers in this class. So if I'm Philly, that would be my choice at number 3. VJ, I may not be as high on VJ as others, but he's a tough eval for me because he had just a phenomenal summer last year representing the Bahamas at the Olympic qualifiers. And it led to him having just a major buzz coming into the year. And even though he had a good season with Baylor, I don't know if we saw the best of VJ, but I do have some concerns. I mean, he's just a very, very gifted athlete, but he wasn't the most efficient at the rim. Sometimes I thought he was a little passive, but then when Baylor was down players and they only had 6 guys that they were playing, he was more assertive then. So I just wonder, was it just the fit at Baylor didn't really maximize his game because they had multiple smaller guards? But between those two, I mean, I think it's a win-win for whoever selects those guys. But me personally, I think I would go with Trey.
Who? I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Yegor Deming of BYU. Rafael, what do you think about the young man from the Cougars? Fun program Kevin Young's building up there right now, and he's going to be one of those guys I think they look back on as kind of one of those foundation pieces of his iteration of the program. Where do you feel about him going in the first round and just his game translating to the next level?
So I've been following Yegor since he was 15 years old. I actually went out to Madrid to watch him play in the fall of 2023. So his last year playing in Europe, and I just talked to him at the draft. Really good kid, very likable. But he just has a unique game. He's 6'9". I think he's the best passer in the draft. He did have some bouts this year where he struggled with being assertive and with his consistency. But I like, what he brings to the table as a big guard. I live in Dallas, and when Kyrie went down, the Mavericks had plenty of guys that wanted to score, but not enough players that were table setters. So he would have been perfect for the Mavs in the second half of the year because he looks to pass first, pass second, and then he'll go to, creating for himself third, but he's very unselfish. His draft range is pretty wide, man. I mean, there's some people that like him in the lottery, but then there's some people that have concerns about the shooting. He wasn't the most efficient shooter. There were times where it looked like BYU played better with him off the floor. There were times where he just was not assertive. There were games against Houston where he just looked like he did not want to bring the ball up the court. But to be fair, outside of OKC and Indiana, what we've seen in the playoffs, I don't think there's too many teams that defend like Houston. But I think he's an interesting prospect, and I think his range could be anywhere from 7 to 17.
Who is your Jalen Brunson steal in this draft, if there is one?
This draft is so hard to predict because I think 15 through 20, maybe 15 through 30. I think that's interchangeable. And then I can even say 25 through 35. But Jalen Brunson was a guy that played 4 years. He won a championship. He had, the resume, just there were concerns about his size. So I would say if there's a guy that's projected second round, that has the resume, that people aren't really mocking as a first rounder, that they may have some questions, and it's the exact opposite of Brunson. It is Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton, 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, a guy that just does not miss when he gets the ball in the paint. He's got the numbers on both sides of the ball, but maybe because he's more so of a traditional 5, kind of like your old school back to the basket 5, that he's not as highly valued in today's NBA. But I think he could be a guy that makes teams scratch their head and wonder, like, how did he fall this far? And then you look at his resume, you say, well, really, how did he fall this far?
LJ Cryer is an interesting story. He's not thought of as a first-round pick or even somebody that might get drafted. But, we saw him for a little bit at Baylor, but he was behind Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler and Maceo Teague and company. And then he really was a hell of a player when he had a chance to play a lot when he was at Houston. But I'm not so sure where he fits in the NBA. What are your thoughts about him?
I think that it was absolutely just a big mistake for him to not be invited to at least the G League Elite Camp or the NBA Combine. If you look at his resume, he's like over 40% from 3 for his career, and it's not on like 2 attempts per game. Like, he's a sniper. He had a great resume in high school. He won a national championship with Baylor. Like you mentioned, he may not have been like a big piece to their puzzle, but he was on the team. And then Houston has been successful with him. So he's a winner and he can shoot. A little undersized. And I think there are some concerns whether or not he's a 1 or a 2, but he's a guy that I think is definitely worth a shot because he provides what teams look for: winning or like being able to win and shooting. Every team wants shooting in today's NBA.
Rafael Barlowe with us on 365 Sports.
Rafael, this is a very random question, but it's a thought I have quite a bit. If I am, say, a guy who's not going to be drafted in these 2 rounds, is my life cooler if I can sign with a European team in a really cool place like Madrid or Athens or Milan, or should I go to Grand Rapids? What should I do when faced with those 2 choices?
Well, first of all, if you are playing college basketball and all the money being thrown around in NIL, you need to stay in school as long as you can. You need to petition for that 5th year, that 6th year, whatever you can, because they're making too much money. Me personally, I love Europe, so I'm probably a little bit biased here. My 2 favorite things are scouting and traveling, and I've spent significant time in all 3 cities. I would definitely choose to live in Europe as opposed to playing in the G League. But that's just me. I'm a little older. Maybe 22-year-old Rafael would have said, I'm going to keep giving the NBA a shot. But also, because I understand the European game, like, it's tough for you to like get a chance to play in those cities right away. Like, when you start off as a rookie in Europe, you might have to play in the middle of nowhere, Greece, as opposed to Athens. Yeah.
Well, I saw there was a scene on a show called New Girl one time where one of the players was a former basketball player, and they said that this league was uphill. Like, that's how bad it was in Europe, that it does. With Tweety Carter, who's a coach here on the Baylor staff, was, if it was like the 50s, he'd have one of those suitcases with all the stickers on it.
Epe Udo.
Epe, played everywhere.
Epe is one of my best friends. I actually lived with Epe in Istanbul, and I lived with him.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's
So I was
awesome.
at his when he was got inducted to the Baylor Hall of Fame. I guess it was a few months ago. So I've been with Epe and Bologna, Italy. I lived with him in Istanbul. That was the best year of my life. And then we were in China during COVID. So I was like his videographer / rebounder. I don't know, manager. But yeah, man, Epe is one of my best friends.
How many of those books did he recommend to you behind you?
Man, I was actually the one. I was actually the one like setting up some of the book clubs in Istanbul, and actually that's how I met him. He rented out a theater here in Dallas for the people in his book club, and they thought it was a joke that he was asking for their information. And he flew everybody to Dallas. He rented out a theater, and they watched the book. they watched a movie of the book that they read together.
That's
and
awesome.
I was doing video work, and I kind of like documented just like the story behind it. And then that's how I ended up meeting him. And then I documented his last year in Istanbul. So I was like his videographer. So small world, but yeah, he
That's
reads
awesome.
a lot of books, like, I don't know, 5 a week. I mean, it's just, he just reads and reads.
What a great guy. Let me ask you this, and we got to go, and I know you've given us more time than we asked for. When you're overseas in Istanbul, wherever it might be, are the American players treated like rock stars? At one point, that used to be the case when it came to baseball in Japan or Korea. And at times we heard the same thing when it came to basketball players in Europe.
Yeah, Epe was definitely a rock star. If he would have stayed, because he won a EuroLeague title. He was the MVP when Fenerbahce won the EuroLeague. If he would have stayed a few more years, they definitely would have built a statue for him. But he's a likable guy, and he made sure that he embraced their culture. So his situation is a little bit different. I think it's either or. Like, if you're an American and you're playing well, they love you. But if you're not playing well, it's a little different than here. You know, if you're here, if you lose a game and you post on Instagram, fans might be mad. But there, if you lose a game, they don't want you to go to the restaurant. They don't want you to do anything but go straight to your apartment until the next game. So the fans are brutal, but the love is crazy when they love you. But if you're not playing well, then you get all the blame. So it's a mixture of both.
Same thing that I heard when players went to Japan when their careers were winding down, or in baseball back in the day. Rafael, fantastic stuff. Glad Tim McMahon got us in touch with you. Tonight, Game 5, Pacers and Thunder. Is this the game that decides the series or what?
Ooh, I thought last game did. I thought that the fourth quarter may have decided the series. I'm going for Indiana just because my dad's from Indianapolis, but I thought the Pacers really missed out on the opportunity. But I would say whoever wins this game probably is the NBA champion.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Great stuff. Rafael Barlowe with us, NBA draft analyst, and covers the NBA. That was great.